oftentimes when we are met with an experience that seems really overwhelming, there's kind of an instantaneous nature to, say, anger. It arises so
Mhm.
quickly. So the idea for folks who have really severe outbursts, the idea like, wait, you're telling me that I can respond differently? It can be
Mm.
really hard to, the experience of something so fiery
Yes.
and intense. How do we begin to kind of chip away at that habitual thing that's been with us our entire lives?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I can really speak from experience. I mean, I really felt in my life that anger was like my middle name, you know. So I think there's various reasons it's hard to hear. So the very first one, I'd say, well, there are many, and this is all sort of, I think we can verify it with our own experience, but this is coming straight from the Buddhist analysis, but putting it in very down to earth words, you know. I think that it seems deeply ingrained in us that when something bad does happen, and bad things do happen, people do terrible things to each other on this planet. We can't argue with that. You know, look at the world every day. So there's no doubt that terrible things happen. So then, if we have a tendency to be angry, and that's not everybody's tendency, then it's we really believe what do, what do you mean, change my mind? I am right. Look what that person did to me. I'm allowed to be angry. So we have this very inbuilt belief that it's justified, whatever response we have. And in one sense, you can say, of course, I'm allowed to be angry. If you punch me in the nose, of course, I'm allowed to be angry. But this analysis here is simply what we need to learn to look at is the suffering that that anger causes, and that is a tremendous thing that's so difficult, because what I believe utterly is that it's not my anger that causes me suffering, it's your punch in the nose that causes me suffering. And that's the part that's really hard to hear, you know. I remember, I mean, always example I give, a really good example, a very powerful example of actually a friend in prison. Her name is Sunny, and I think she wrote a memoir. This is back in the 70s. Just this nice Jewish girl with a hippie husband and hippie kids hitching in Florida, and they get picked up by two guys. I don't know the whole story. I can't remember, but she's a friend of mine now. She's out of prison. She's old now. She's living in Ireland. She got out after 17 years, but she was. They were picked up, and then somehow the two guys driving the car got stopped by the police, and the two guys killed the police and blamed the hippies. So they were on death row in Florida. The husband eventually got executed. His head burst into flames. I mean, like nightmarish story, one after the other. You can't imagine it. You know, she was in solitary confinement for years. I mean, it's like medieval, the kind of intense treatment. So they were both totally and utterly innocent. She eventually was found to be innocent, and she got out after 17 years. But she's this amazing example of a person. And what's so interesting, she's not a Buddhist, she's not religious in any way. So the only way I can put it is she somehow was able to find this kind of emotional, she had this emotional intelligence. And for me, it's the only way to say it, that she's not a Buddhist. She'd never heard of Buddhism. She didn't think about Buddhism. But this is exactly the point the Buddha's making, that it is possible, no matter how bad the situation is, you can learn to see it differently, refer to it, respond to it differently, not just blindly with the unhappy emotions. So what she was able to do, she was in her cell on her own, isolated. You know, you can't believe it initially. You can't believe that these people aren't going to believe that you didn't do this thing, right? So eventually she said I finally realized I could not change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. So she said I decided different things, she said, and we've discussed it since. But she said I I finally so I decided I am not a prisoner. I am a monk. I am not in a cell. I'm in a cave. Now that can sound very romantic, like she's living in La La Land, but I mean, there's far more to it than that. But basically, she said she knew she had the choice not to go crazy. She had the choice not to go out of her brain with anger. She had the choice to change the way she interpreted. So I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's absolutely outrageous. And so the whole point of it is this: it's not moralistic. Oh, you're naughty, you shouldn't be angry. It's not the point. The point is, if we start to look into our minds, we're going to see the pain of anger, depression, jealousy, anxiety, and they're all got the same character of being deeply disturbing to oneself. And that brings two consequences. One is you completely lose your mind. You have no common sense left, especially with anger. You've completely lost the plot. You've gone off the planet. You have no control. You can't control anything you think or do or say, and you can literally go mad, which is not uncommon. So I remember one at the same time of reading about Sonny, this other fellow on death row, also innocent, and this is not uncommon, unfortunately, who'd been accused of rape and murder. He'd be what we call normal, that he completely did go crazy. He went out of his brain every day. As long as he had a voice, he would be screaming, I did not rape and kill that woman. I did not rape and kill that woman. Now, we would say that's normal. That's reasonable. Of course he acts this way. Look what they've done to him. All of those points are true. Look what they've done to him. But the thing is that's so hard to see. If you'd gone to him then out of kindness and said, well, you know, sweetheart, there are ways you can learn to be less angry and less out of your brain so you don't lose your sanity, so that you can become more relaxed. And even then, if you want to do something about getting out of prison, which is what happened to Sunny, because she didn't lose the plot, she continued to never give up working on her freedom, and she eventually got freedom. But when you've lost your mind, when you're out of your brain with despair, grief, loss, depression, you name it, you can't lift a finger for yourself or anyone else. And this is how we know it's true. But if we're fixated on, but the person, look what they did to me, I'm allowed to be angry. It's just, it's you're right, but what good is it? And it's hard to get to this. It's hard to navigate to get to this because it sounds so heavy, you know?